academic writing. In your academic writing, you have to answer the assignment questions. When you answer the assignment question, you have to follow the magic of three. Number one magic is answering the question. You never answer beyond the question's requirement. Number two magic is developing a position for your answer. Number three magic is using a TDR structure to put your answer in your document appropriately, so you can convince your marker to pass your assignments. Now let's move to have a look at all these magics individually. First, let me have a look at the first magic, number one, answering the question. Let me take an example to analyze this. Evaluate the government's stance on pandemic. In this question, you have to answer this question. Before you answer this question, you have to break this question into three meaningful magical pieces. Number one magical piece is the command word. Number two magical piece is the topic word. Number three magical piece is the scope word. When I say the command word, the magical piece number one, in this question, that is evaluate. You might have heard of command words before. Analyze, describe, explain. These are all examples of command words. Now in this question, evaluate. Number two piece is the topic word. In this question, government's stance. That's the topic that you're going to write your answer at, and your answer is limited to, focus to. The scope of the question is pandemic. Your limit is pandemic. You never write anything beyond the pandemic. So command word, topic word, scope word. Any question you get, you have to break the question into these three magical pieces with meaning, so we can approach the answer. Now let me take another question to analyze this even further. Now in this question, evaluate the government's stance on economic crisis. If you compare the question before and after, the only difference is the scope word. Earlier the question was about COVID pandemic. Now the question is about the economic crisis. So in this question, your scope is talking about the economic crisis, not about pandemic. So evaluate the government's stance on economic crisis. Again, let me ask another question here. Evaluate the public's stance on pandemic. When I say public stance on pandemic, the difference is about public stance. So your topic is public. What does public think about this pandemic this time? So when scope word changes, the whole question changes. When the topic word changes, the whole question changes as well. So we have to be very careful about when we break this question into pieces. Now let's see how to answer this question. When you want to answer this question, let me take the first question. Evaluate the government's stance on pandemic. When you answer this question, you always approach the question from the reverse order. You start explaining the pandemic, what pandemic is about, that is your scope, and you talk about the stance on pandemic after that of the government, and after that you evaluate the government's stance comparing with some other different countries' stance. So you will be approaching your question from the reverse order. You start from the scope word, then the topic word, finally you do the command word. Now let's move to the magic number two, the second magic, develop a position on the topic for your answer. Now academic positions in any question differ in three ways, and I'm calling these three different magical ways. Number one magical way is evidence-based or verifiable. Number two magic is about impersonal or objective. It is not personal at all. Number three is about the qualified or precise, exact, reliable message in that to develop your position. So let's have a look at these one by one. When you write your answer of a position for a question, you always have to bring in evidences. You have to bring in evidences and say, based on this evidence, this is the position of this. This should be verifiable, meaning you have to give appropriate references to verify these evidences so we can accept your position. Because in an answer of your assignment, the position of you may be this way or that way, good or bad, plus or minus. If you ask the government's stance on pandemic, one would say the government's stance is this way, good. The other one say no, it's bad. the other one side is positive and the other opposition side is negative. It's not a problem. Every answer is correct as long as you have the evidence for your answer. So you have to bring in verifiable evidences to develop your position. That is magic number 1 under this developing a position. The magic number 2 under this is impersonal. You never bring in any messages or evidences from your own to justify your position. You have to always bring in from reliable academic sources, reliable experts, so that it is impersonal. If you want to say government's stance on pandemic, you never say I think. You say that doctor says, this economist says, this medical institution says. So it is impersonal, but it is acceptable because experts are talking about. The number 3 magic is about qualified or precise. You have to bring in messages exactly. You never say, according to the statistics, there are less people affected by this, or there are many people affected by this. You never say like this. You have to exactly say the number. 5,500 people have been affected by this pandemic, or 8% of these people have been affected by this pandemic. You have to say exact number, qualifiable. If it is quantity, that's more appropriate. So you have to look into these 3 magics: evidence-based, impersonal, you never write anything on your own, and finally the qualified, precise, exact message. You never say lot of, you never say less, you never say more of. You have to give exact numbers. Now let's come to the third magic of this academic writing. The third magic is using a TDR structure to write your answer. In this magic, you have 3 magical pieces. Number 1 magical piece is about the topic, introduction to the position. And number 2 magic is about development of position. Number 3 magic is about restatement of position. Now, when I talk about the topic, you will be introducing your position to the audience and you'll be using 1 paragraph for it. And number 2 is development of position. Here you may be using 3 points to establish your position on this question. So 3 paragraphs there. And finally, you'll be using 1 paragraph to emphasize your answer, to argue your answer that this is the right position, this is the position based on this evidences, using 1 paragraph. So you'll be altogether having 5 paragraphs, 1 for topic, 3 for development of position, and finally 1 paragraph to reinstate your position. We call this 5 paragraph academic essay, but you can use many points to establish your position, so you may have many paragraphs there as well if your question requires you to write more words. Let me take an example question now to explain what we have learned so far. Explain the good characteristics of good parents. This question can be broken into meaningful magical pieces. First is the good parent, which is the scope word. Good characteristics is the topic word, and finally the explain is the command word. Now when I answer this question, I'll be having the topic, position and reinstatement according to TDR structure. So in my topic, I'll be introducing the position. I'm introducing the answer like this: the essential characteristics of good parents are patience, respect and love. 3 pieces of message here, 3 good characteristics here. So I'm introducing those 3 in 1 paragraph. Next, I'm developing a position for each of them. So I'll be having 1 paragraph for patience and another paragraph for respect, and finally I'll have 1 more paragraph for love. So 3 paragraphs for each points to establish good characteristics, and finally I'll be having another final paragraph that will reinstate my position. Parents are the most important teachers of patience, respect and love. The confusion is where to start the answer from. You always start the answer developing your position first. So you develop your position for patience, then respect and finally the love. After you write this position, you introduce the position in your topic and you complete the answer with reinstatement finally. So you'll get the proper structure in this TDR structure.